My name is Brittany Dorsey, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my professional journey from CNU until what I'm doing now. So, like Dr. Atkinson said, I graduated in 2011, and then I graduated again in 2013 with my master's. And I've actually been here ever since. I'm an adjunct, and I always do Bio 211 was what I started out with, and then I started taking on Bio 491 writing intensive, and I've absolutely loved being able to see the freshmen that I teach in the 211 lab, and then 4 years later see them in the 491 class. It's great to see them evolve and grow. When I was here, I was part of the GK-12 program. Do you still do that now? It was a grant offered to where we worked in the high schools in the area while we were getting our master's degree to help them integrate environmental science into their studies. It was really neat. We took them out on different field trips and helped them learn about the Chesapeake Bay and that sort of thing. I guess what kind of got me started into what I wanted to do, or what I thought I wanted to do, was the environmental regulations class that I took my graduate year. I really learned about the rules that the companies in the area had to follow, and throughout my graduate research, one of my areas was the James River out by the shipyard. And I thought, wow, it must be really polluted because of what the shipyard is doing. Come to find out, there are these regulations they have to follow. And if they don't, they get heavily fined. They actually can't run as a business. So it's all very important things. So before I got there, I was fortunate enough to get an internship at Continental Automotive over by the airport on Jefferson. You might have seen it. It's like a big yellow and black sign, I think hidden off Bland. And it was actually a former graduate of CNU that reached out needing an intern, and one of the professors here got word to me, and so I got to apply and got that. So for about 6 months I worked there, and I actually focused more on health and safety. So you'll find in the professional world, whenever you have the environmental science department of a company, it's usually grouped with health and safety as well, all regulatory bodies that you have to follow. So I thought I was going to do more environmental stuff there, and I ended up doing more health and safety things like fall protection, making sure, slips, trips, and falls, those sorts of things, anything under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So from there, another graduate student from here told me that there was a job opening, Crystal, at the shipyard, and said you would be able to work with me, it would be super fun. So I applied there because I saw environmental health and safety in the title, and I got that job. So that's kind of where I started my professional career. I graduated and was able to get that job pretty much in the same month. Just a little bit about myself too. I currently live in Toano, which is just on the other side of Williamsburg, with my husband and now 7th-month-old and my 2 chihuahuas. They're still my first babies. And it's just really great that I can still be involved in the CNU community. I try to be involved in any way I can. It's a lot busier now with my 7-month-old, but as long as I can always, just come back here and help the students in any way, that's what I try to do. So, a little bit about Newport Shipbuilding. It was founded in 1886. Next week, I believe, is our 133rd anniversary. They're going to have a big celebration, and it spans more than 550 acres and sits 2.5 miles of waterfront property on the James River. It is the sole designer, builder, and refueler of U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, currently working on the Ford class. It is one of 2 providers for naval submarines. Currently, they have the Virginia class submarines, and now there's a new class called the Ohio class. We have over 20,000 employees, the largest industrial employer in Virginia. That may change once Amazon comes, I guess, I heard, maybe. And it's the largest shipbuilding company in the United States. So being that it's so large, and it's a great opportunity for anybody who wants to work there. There's something there for everybody. If you are a math person, or if you're an engineer especially, environmental science, even health, we have all that sort of thing. So there's really a niche for everybody. These are just some pictures. So This is actually where I work now. My building is off this side, but this is the dry dock, and right now there's a carrier being built in it. So it looks a little bit different, but you can see how large just that one portion is. This is another one of the submarine area, and this is another one of an actual carrier. And this is CVN 65, another carrier that we are actually decommissioning. You probably see all this when you cross the James River Bridge too. So it's just really neat to see. I mean, they're like individual cities on these carriers, and they're massive. I mean, when you walk aboard, you're like, wow, it's huge. So when I first started at the shipyard about 6-ish years ago, my role was in the environmental health and safety department. I had a role where I kind of got to do a little bit of everything. I wasn't just an analyst that worked on carriers or that worked on submarines or that was industrial hygiene. My job was communications and training, and so I got to dabble in a little bit of all of that. So I managed and I developed and distributed all communications that came from our department. I coordinated the development of all training, not just health and safety, but environmental stuff too, hazmat training, clean air training, the Clean Water Act training, all that stuff. I managed the personal protective equipment program. So, you know, like in lab, how you have to wear safety glasses or goggles, closed-toed shoes, that sort of thing. We have lots more, we call it PPE, than that. Fall protection, hard hats, hundreds of types of gloves depending on if you're doing hot work like welding or if you're working with chemicals. So I had to manage that program to make sure that not only we had the proper equipment, but that we also had equipment that was comfortable and fit for everybody. So when I got into this position, there was like, all the types of gloves were men's sizes. So we had women welders who were trying to hold these small tools and they couldn't have the dexterity that they needed. So I went out and ran some pilot programs to see what kinds of gloves that we could use that they could, you know, utilize better as females with a little bit smaller of hands. Things like that, same with coveralls. So that was a really interesting program to help with. And then I also did the hazard communication program. So you know, when you work with chemicals in the lab, you have something called a safety data sheet. I think all of our labs have a binder of those now in the back. And so I got to keep up with all of those, making sure that any chemicals that came into the shipyard, whether it be a contractor or an employee, that they were something that weren't going to A, harm our environment or harm our employees. There were certain regulations that we had to follow. So I also helped with procedural development for these two, labeling, and any kind of training that needed to happen. I also got to, this was my favorite part of the job, I got to facilitate and manage any type of EH&S audits. So there's different certifications that you can get under the EPA or under OSHA. And so we were ISO certified for environmental, and we also had the VPP certification for safety. So the Voluntary Protection Program, or VPP, was the OSHA side of things, and it was something that is given to companies that have exemplary statistics, so meaning you don't have as many injuries as everybody else in your industry. Shipbuilding being one of the most dangerous industries out there, people get injured. It's part of the job, which is unfortunate, but we had very, very, very low injury rates. We also had, there were like 4 pillars that you had to follow, making sure that you had employee involvement, management, leadership, hazard analysis, those sorts of things. And we had to prove that we had a great program for all of those pillars. And so anytime OSHA would come in to do audits to recertify us, I got to lead the lead OSHA rep around, show them what was going on, you know, guide through the week basically, and make sure that they had everything they needed, and basically put together the final report to make sure that we got our recertification. I loved that. I got to meet people outside of the shipyard. I actually, being part of that program, I became a special government employee, so I could go to other areas within the country and do their audits too, which was really neat. So you learned what they were doing in their area. And then on the environmental side of things, we were ISO 14001 certified, and so we had audits with that as well. I didn't have as much of a lead role in that one, but I did get to help and see the different questions that they would ask the employees, and that was sort of the side I was involved in.
Brittany,
Yes.
could you say just a little bit more about that? So what agency administers that, and what would be an example of something that would be in that?
In the ISO 14000?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it is an environmental management system that is regulated through, I believe, the DEQ, I think. And the side that I was involved in, we had to make sure that all of our employees knew our SOAR policy. That was our thing. I wish I had my badge with me because it has it on it. SOAR stood for Stop Pollution. O was Obey Rules. A was Always Recycle, I think. And R was Reuse, I believe. I think. I'll have to look into that again. So the auditors would go around and say, do you know your environmental management system? And so we gave every 20,000 employees a badge card, so all they had to do was say, yes, this is our environmental management system. And if employees didn't know that, then we would get dinged for that sort of thing. So they had to know that we had an environmental management system, we knew where to find the procedure if we needed to, and that sort of thing. So it was pretty interesting. Let's see. So the environmental section of that department not only does that sort of thing, but they also do any waste management. Being that it's the shipyard, we have all sorts of waste, whether it be paint or the radiological waste falls into a different group actually. We have air pollution, any of our buildings that emits any sort of air emissions, I guess. They have to have certain filters and things like that, and there has to be somebody designated there that keeps track of what's being released and how much, because we're only allowed to release but so much. We have wastewater and discharges into the James River, reports that go to the EPA and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. They also oversaw any excavations, so we're constantly building new buildings, ripping up parking lots and putting new things, and they have to also make sure, that there's nothing that's going to be an exposure to the employees. One of the things being asbestos or things like that. And then overall yard cleanliness. They, I believe they still do it where they have a single source of waste now, where any kind of trash or recycling all goes to the steam plant over in Hampton. The steam generation plant, so they're reusing that to make energy, which is pretty cool. So, and then we're also transferring a lot of our energy and things like that to more environmental friendly alternatives. So all those things give us better ratings with the environmental agencies, which can give us, money off and things like that too, which is good. The health and safety section, which I was more involved in, we did any of the procedures, disciplinary records, accident logs. So anytime somebody was injured or there was an incident, maybe a crane accident, we would have to go through and do the accident investigations for that sort of thing. Like I said before, the communications and training. We had EH&S task teams, which is one of my favorite aspects too, because you really got to work with the people on the waterfront who do the hard work, the welding, the painting, the electrical work. They all volunteered, some of them would volunteer to be on these task teams that would kind of be the eyes and the ears of the EH&S department on the waterfront. Because, there were maybe 45 of us, but there were thousands of them. They know what the conditions are better than anybody else because they're working in them day in and day out. They would get together on these task teams and bring issues up, bring new ideas up, anything that would help improve environmental or health and safety. So that was really fun. I loved working with them. And then we had people who supported specifically the carriers. That would be their liaison between our department and the people on the carrier or submarine. Same with the shops and the foundry. We also have a marine chemist section where they handle any sort of work being done in a confined space or an enclosed space. Are you familiar with that sort of thing?